Hi there, I'm Maris. My husband and his mother framed me for theft at my own anniversary party. One minute I was raising a toast, the next cops were dragging me out in front of everyone I loved. But that wasn't the worst part. They had been planning it for months, stealing my house, my money, even my name. How do you come back from that, would you? The warm Georgia night wrapped our backyard in a soft golden glow. String lights crisscrossed above the long farmhouse table. The scent of honeysuckle hung heavy in the air, mixed with grilled shrimp and mint juleps. I had spent months planning this anniversary party. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of rebuilding my parents' old house with my own hands, 10 years of becoming someone I was proud of. For a moment, everything felt just right. People laughed. The wine flowed. Rourke clinked his glass and stood beside me, grinning like we were the power couple of Savannah. His mother, Celeste, perched stiffly at the head of the table, her smile too practiced, her eyes too calculating. That woman always dressed like she was headed to a cocktail party in Manhattan, even on our front porch. I felt her stare burn through me, but I smiled anyway. You learn to smile through things when you marry into people like her. Rourke cleared his throat, raised his glass. To Maris, he said, the most patient woman in Georgia. Everyone chuckled. I even blushed a little. And then, she's the only one who went near my room. The voice sliced through the air like a blade. Silence followed it, thick and suffocating. Celeste stood, her hands trembling ever so slightly. My watch is gone. My Cartier. Gone. It was in my bag when I arrived. I blinked. What? She went in there to get the wine opener, remember? Celeste looked around at the guests, her voice rising. I saw her near my things. Are you serious right now? I said, my voice cracking. Rourke looked at me, then at her. Mom, are you sure? Celeste didn't flinch. Positive. I didn't take anything. I looked around. Every familiar face now seemed unfamiliar. Their eyes turned on me like I was some stranger. You're lying, Rourke snapped. Just admit it so we can move on. My breath caught in my throat. Excuse me? He took a step forward. If you did it, say it. Don't humiliate yourself more than you already have. My hands went cold. You think I'd steal from your mother? At my own house? At our anniversary? I don't know what to think anymore, he said, voice shaking, not from fear but rage. Then came the slap. It wasn't a slap like in movies. No dramatic pause, just a sharp, loud crack and a chorus of gasps. His hand had landed. My cheek flared. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Someone called the police. Rourke, I think. He muttered something about needing to handle this properly. Properly, like dragging me out of my own party in handcuffs. While we waited, I staggered to the den and yanked open the security monitor screen. Nothing. No blinking red light, no files. I opened the cabinet. No SD card. What happened to the footage? I demanded. Rourke stood behind me, arms crossed. The system glitched, probably overwritten or something. No, I said. No, that's not... Something's wrong. You're paranoid, he said, eyes cold now. If it's missing, maybe that says more than you think. I turned toward him. You know I didn't take it. He said nothing. 6 hours earlier, I'd seen Celeste walk past the office door. She never entered that part of the house, claimed it was too modern for her taste. But she lingered. She smiled when she saw me watching her. Now it made sense. As red and blue lights splashed against my living room walls, I was walked out like a criminal. Cameras from someone's phone caught it. Of course they did. Neighbors stared from porches. Guests pretended not to look. Celeste stood just inside the door, face calm, one hand over her heart, like she was the victim of the century. Rourke didn't follow me out. He didn't say a word. In the back seat of the cruiser, the leather stuck to my skin. My throat was dry, my heart loud. As the flashing lights swallowed my home, I realized I'd been hunted. The ceiling of that motel room had water stains shaped like broken hearts. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. The motel coffee was bitter and burned my tongue, but I drank it anyway. The bruise on my cheek was turning a shade of purple that reminded me of the orchids Rourke used to send after our arguments, back when apologies still meant something. I had no phone charger, no change of clothes, just a purse that still smelled like last night's wine and smoke. I called Rourke, straight to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. Then I saw it. Blocked. I didn't cry. I took a cab back to the house that was still mine. Or so I thought. It had rained. The gravel driveway glistened under the morning sun. I stepped out of the car and stopped cold. The front gate, which we never locked, not once in 10 years, was shut tight with a brand new electronic keypad. A yellow legal notice flapped in the wind, taped to the iron bars. Eviction notice, effective immediately, property transferred, unauthorized entry prohibited. I felt my chest cave in. I rattled the gate. No answer. My own code didn't work. The same neighbors who'd watched me walk out in handcuffs were now watching again, from behind their curtains. Silent, just like last night. I pulled out my phone and called Mark, the lawyer who helped me handle my parents' estate years ago. He sounded groggy. Maris, what's going on? I've been locked out of my house. There's an eviction notice. Rourke and Celeste claim full ownership. A pause. That's impossible. You inherited that property outright. No prenup. I need answers, I said, voice cracking. 2 hours later, I sat in a library using a public computer. I logged into my old email backup system, the one I hadn't touched since switching laptops. There it was, a PDF labeled Property Deed Update Confirmed Signature. I opened it. My name was gone, just Rourke's. But the signature, my signature, was the same one from our wedding documents. The exact same, down to the angle of the S. I zoomed in. Someone had copied and pasted it. I sat frozen for a long time before I called Rick, my former financial planner. He hadn't heard from me in months. Rick, I said, do you remember witnessing any document transfers regarding my property? Last I saw, you still owned it. Why? I told him everything. That's fraud, he said softly. I already knew. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd erased me, and they hadn't done it last night. This was planned, calculated, weeks, maybe months ago, before the party, before the toast, before Celeste's little performance. I stepped out into the damp afternoon. My heels sank into the grass across from my old house. I sat on a park bench across the street, the forged deed in my lap. There she was, Celeste, clipping roses like nothing happened, watering the flower beds I planted, wearing my garden gloves. I tightened my grip on the paper until the corners curled. If they wanted war, I was done playing fair. They stopped talking when I walked in. I had barely stepped inside Magnolia Roast, the scent of roasted beans clinging to warm brick walls, when the air shifted. A couple in the corner whispered, then looked straight at me. She's the one. That's her, from the paper. I turned my head toward the pastry case, pretending to browse, but I saw it. Folded on the counter, bold print over a blurry photo of me taken at the party. Real estate wife in mental health spiral, sources say. They didn't even need to print my name. Everyone in Savannah already knew. The coffee in my hands shook so badly, I had to set it down. I hadn't cried in public since I was 10. I wasn't about to start again. But inside, my stomach dropped like someone had punched a hole in it. I walked out. A few blocks later, my phone buzzed. A cancellation from a client I'd had for months. Sorry, something came up. Need to pause the project indefinitely. 5 minutes later, another. That's when the email hit. Anonymous sender. No message, just an attachment. I opened it. My breath stopped. It was one of my old therapy summaries. Intake notes from when I was 29, right after Mom died. I'd written things no one else knew. Raw things, terrible things. I remember crying in that office like I hadn't since childhood. I never thought anyone would see those pages but me and Dr. Klein. And now they were being shared like gossip. I couldn't breathe. How did Celeste get them? I checked the header. The scan had come from a storage archive Rourke and I used for legal files. She dug through my grief and found my scars, and weaponized them. Within hours, 2 more clients backed out. My website was down. Someone flagged my LinkedIn profile as unprofessional conduct. Later that night, I found out Rourke's attorney had filed a motion claiming I was mentally unstable, with documented episodes of dissociation. My world wasn't just collapsing, it was being incinerated, and I was next on the matchstick. I called Dana. We'd met our freshman year at Vanderbilt. She was my emergency contact for over a decade. She helped me through my divorce from my first marriage. She knew everything. I called again, no answer, texted, nothing. I showed up at her apartment. She cracked the door just wide enough for her eyes. "Dana, did you give them anything?" Her silence told me more than words. "Please, tell me you didn't." She looked down, ashamed. "They said it was just paperwork, old stuff. You weren't going to use it anyway." "They?" She didn't answer, just stepped aside. The apartment smelled like fresh paint. I noticed the new countertops. Granite. "You sold me out for a kitchen remodel?" My voice was quiet, broken. "I thought you'd be fine, Maris. You always bounce back." "I bounce because people like you push me off cliffs." I didn't wait for her to speak again. I walked out. That night, back at the motel, I opened a new notebook, wrote down everything. Dates, email subjects, who said what, when they said it. I didn't care if it was admissible in court. I needed to remember. This wasn't just a smear campaign. It was a slow erasure. I was being unmade, piece by piece. A knock on the door startled me. Just the wind. I returned to my laptop. One new email, subject line. "She's been planning this for years." An image attached, a scan of a worn-out notebook. I clicked it, handwritten, neat cursive, labeled Contingency M. Only the first page loaded. I leaned in, reading the header again. My heart was thudding so loud I almost didn't hear my own whisper. I wasn't paranoid. I was prey. I hadn't opened the lockbox since the day I shoved it into my car, just before they changed the locks. It had sat in the closet of a borrowed cabin, untouched, collecting dust, until tonight. The hinges creaked when I lifted the lid. Old tax forms, insurance paperwork, property copies. My fingers slid past manila folders until they stopped on something odd. A printed monthly deposit report. My name was on it, but I had never opened this account. The amounts listed weren't small, thousands, repeating monthly. I felt the blood drain from my face. I drove straight to the bank first thing the next morning. The manager, a gray-haired man in an overstarched shirt, squinted at the paper. "This account was created a while ago, but you're not the primary." I didn't open it. He looked up, hesitated. "Rourke is listed as the managing trustee." The air in my lungs thinned. He pulled more records. It was all there. Transfers from my personal inheritance account slowly bled into this trust fund. The activity began just weeks after our wedding, set up with a vague description, for long-term marital security. Bullshit. The manager tapped a final screen. "You're listed as a beneficiary but not an owner, so unfortunately." I stood up, walked out. My hand shook so hard I could barely hold my keys. It wasn't protection. It was a trap disguised as love. Back at the cabin, I emptied every box I hadn't sorted. Somewhere in the stack of Celeste's junk, what movers had mistakenly dumped into my trunk, I found it. A leather-bound notebook, cheap spiral spine, stiff with age. I flipped it open, page after page, dated notes written in Celeste's neat looping script. Transfer funds by March 14th. Therapy history =, weak point, pursue narrative. Signature via Rourke, practice initials. Each phrase slammed into me like a fist. My knees buckled. I sat on the floor, notebook open on my lap, breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a scream. It wasn't theft. It was premeditated annihilation. Every time she hugged me, every compliment, the "we're family now" pep talks, all part of a timeline. I took photos of every page, sent them directly to Detective Halloran with no caption, just the images. Minutes later, my phone lit up. "You were right," he replied. "This isn't fraud, it's organized exploitation." That night, I turned the cabin's kitchen table into a war room. Tax documents, bank statements, emails, the ledger, everything laid out like a crime board. And it was. Just not one written in blood. This was a different kind of murder. Of trust. Of identity. Of history. I highlighted every date that matched a conversation, a gift, a change in Rourke's tone. The cross-referencing lit up like a grid. This wasn't spontaneous greed. It was clockwork. They'd mapped out my entire undoing before I ever knew the rules of their game. But now I had the playbook. My name wasn't going to disappear without a fight. They had buried me in paperwork. I was going to dig them out with it. As I pieced it all together, my phone rang again. "Halloran." "We traced another account Rourke opened," he said, "but it's offshore. Caymans." My gaze shifted back to Celeste's notebook. Near the bottom of one page, April extraction window. He wasn't done stealing. He was planning an escape. The cafe was too quiet for that kind of conversation. Forks clinked against plates. Coffee hissed from the barista's wand. I sat across from Rourke, watching him fake sincerity like it was a practiced ritual. He looked better than he deserved. Clean shave, ironed shirt, that effortless charm he wore like armor. "I missed you," he said, leaning in. "Let's not let this spiral any further. We were good once." I stirred my coffee slowly, then slid the paper across the table. One sheet, folded twice. His face shifted before he even opened it. He recognized the subject line without reading a word. Use the party to trigger her. Be ready with the script. It wasn't just the message that cut. It was the damn attachment. A press memo drafted in advance with my name in bold and phrases like history of instability, emotional distress, unfit for civil mediation. My voice didn't tremble when I spoke. "Was this your plan the whole time?" Rourke's jaw flexed. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. Celeste, she said you were spiraling again. You didn't blink while framing me for theft. Because you would have burned it all down," he snapped. "You were unraveling." "You wrote that narrative," I said, tapping the paper. "You pre-wrote my downfall." He stood up too quickly. A table nearby turned to look. He lowered his voice, biting. "You're the one who ruined this family." No apology, no shame. Outside in the parking lot, I stopped walking. I turned. "You want to talk about ruining a family?" I pulled my phone back out. "Here's your mom's email. Recognize it?" He didn't take the bait, just stared as the screen lit up. Subject: do it before April. "Before probate review," I said flatly. "You pushed the party up to dodge legal tracing." I watched it click in his head. The realization that I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. "You don't get it," he muttered. "It wasn't just me. She orchestrated everything." "But you cashed the checks." His voice turned cold. "You were never smart enough to keep it all anyway." I didn't flinch. "If I go down, I'll take you both with me. The difference is, this time, I have the truth." That broke whatever thread of patience he had left. He spat something under his breath, stalked to his car, and slammed the door so hard the windows trembled. Let him drive off. I wasn't chasing. Back home, the hallway smelled like stale carpet and someone else's dinner. As I reached my door, something red caught my eye. An envelope on the floor, just inside the crack. No stamp, no return name. Inside, a printed email. Rourke's digital signature authorizing the trust fund transfer, dated 2 weeks after the official filing said I had voluntarily signed everything away. They had messed up the timeline, and now I had them. I shouldn't have gone back to that house. But Rourke had forgotten to include some documents for the court. I knew he didn't forget. He wanted me to show up. Or worse, Celeste did. Her kitchen was exactly the same. All white cabinets, imported marble counters, the subtle scent of lavender cleaner and designer judgment. She wore a silk robe like armor and greeted me with a smile tight enough to crack porcelain. "Tea?" she asked, already pouring without waiting for an answer. I set the folder down. "I'm not staying long," she nodded, still smiling. "Of course not." We sat. A clink of china, silence. "I always thought Rourke would marry someone with clearer priorities," she said gently. "Someone who understood the weight of family, legacy." I kept still, don't take the bait. But she leaned in just slightly, that polished mask slipping. "You were never welcome here, Maris." The words landed like a slap I never saw coming. No venom, no raised voice, just plain surgical cruelty. My jaw tightened as my fingers wrapped around the delicate porcelain teacup. I didn't drink. "I see." She dabbed her lips with a napkin, unaffected. "You're not like us, and you never were." 16 years ago, I remembered my father, just before the engagement dinner, standing outside under string lights and oak trees. He was uncomfortable in the expensive tux I picked for him. He said softly, almost apologetically, "Not every invitation is an open door. Some are traps dressed as kindness." I had laughed, told him to give people a chance. But now his voice rang louder than hers. The entire marriage, the brunches, the faux family portraits, it was all stagecraft. A costume party I never got the memo for. I stood slowly. Celeste looked up at me like I was a house guest overstaying. "You call this divorce a tantrum," I said, "as if what you and your son did was discipline." She didn't respond. Her silence gave permission for mine to rise. "You want to erase me, rewrite history, but this house won't protect you anymore. It kept your secrets, yes, but mine? Mine are going to light the damn place up." Her smile vanished. "I see through the curtains now, Celeste, and very soon, so will everyone else." She didn't move, didn't blink, but her grip on that linen napkin said everything. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a slammed door. I walked out quietly. That night, I sat at my small desk in a much smaller apartment. I pulled open the drawer where I kept the few remnants of that life. The invitation to our engagement party sat on top, heavy cardstock, cursive script. "Welcome to the family," it read in Celeste's handwriting. I lit a match, watched it curl and blacken. "This time, I'm not waiting for a seat at the table," I whispered. "I'm flipping the table. I no longer wanted justice. I wanted the truth. Documented, unerasable, and cold." The night hummed with a distant siren outside my apartment. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the glow from my desk lamp painting long shadows across piles of folders, notepads, and receipts. I'd found the pattern. I'd followed the money, but what I needed now was sound. Their words. I watched the salvaged clip again. Celeste's voice caught briefly on my phone. Just 5 seconds, but enough to send chills down my spine. "She'll never see it coming," she'd said with a dry laugh, sipping from her wine glass. I hit pause. They thought I was broken. No, I was sharpening. The next morning, I showed up at the house under the pretense of dropping off Rourke's subpoenaed bank statements. Celeste wasn't home, thank God. Rourke didn't come to the door. I let myself in, like always. The first recorder went in the study, taped behind the cabinet drawer where he kept his phone charger. The second, discreetly tucked behind the guest bathroom vent, where Celeste often whispered into her phone after dinner. Every motion was deliberate, hands steady, eyes scanning. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, but I didn't pause. If they found them, I'd lose everything. But if they didn't, it would all be on tape, and they would never silence me again. I walked out the door with my face neutral, but a thread of victory curled inside me like smoke. 7 days. That's how long I waited before retrieving the recorders. I had barely slept. My dreams blurred with court motions, gaslighting, news clips, and that damn phrase on loop. "She'll never see it coming." The first device looked intact, so did the second. I plugged them into my laptop. Empty. Both. No files, not a single byte. I stared, blinking. Then again. Still nothing. Not even corrupted data, just wiped clean. I threw the first recorder across the room so hard it cracked the drywall. My scream was swallowed by the mattress as I buried my face in it, fists clenched, every tendon in my body screaming. I hadn't cried in weeks. I didn't start now. I sat back up. They had eyes on me. They knew. They were watching, listening. Someone had accessed the devices remotely. Fine. They erased the evidence. But they couldn't erase what I remembered. I grabbed my notepad and started writing, line by line, every phrase I could recall from the week before. Pacing, whispering, word choice, tone. It poured out like venom. I filled pages before the adrenaline stopped long enough for my hand to ache. Then I opened the fireproof safe in the back of my closet, dropped the notepad inside, locked it. "Your move," I whispered. But something gnawed at me. If they could access the devices, who else was helping them? Were they watching my emails, my cloud storage, my phone? I powered off everything, unplugged my Wi-Fi router, wrapped my phone in tinfoil like some paranoid conspiracy nut. Maybe I was paranoid, but I wasn't stupid. The next morning, I hit the thrift store on 43rd and picked up a 1999 camcorder. Bulky, obsolete, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, no spyware. They couldn't hack tape. I pulled it from the plastic bag when I got home, dusted it off, and popped in a blank cassette. The whirring noise it made was almost comforting. If they want a war, I said aloud to no one, they just picked the wrong damn general. I aimed the lens toward the door and pressed record. Let's see them hack 1999. I stepped out of the car into a wall of morning heat. The courthouse loomed ahead. Red brick, cold lines, humming with tension. I adjusted the blazer over my trembling shoulders, felt the weight of the flash drive tucked in my palm, and breathed through my teeth. No more pleading, no more silence. This wasn't about redemption. This was reckoning. The courtroom was full. Strangers, neighbors, a few journalists pretending to be casual observers. They didn't speak when I walked in, but their eyes? Loud. I sat beside my attorney, shoulders square. My hands shook only once when I slid the flash drive across the table. He nodded and stood. The trial was already in session. Rourke was notably absent. Celeste, however, sat upright in her navy blazer, fake pearls glinting under the fluorescence. She looked like someone who still believed she could spin reality, but her hand kept twitching at the edge of the table. The judge called for our opening. My attorney inserted the flash into the court system's secure terminal. We request permission to admit audio evidence recorded on a non-network analog device, he said, calm, sharp, approved. The courtroom speakers crackled, a tinny hum, and then Rourke's voice. Just let Mom handle the show, he said, laughing. She knows how to bury a bitch. Gasps broke like waves. Celeste lunged forward. That's fake! That's been doctored! Objection! The judge slammed the gavel. Sit down, Mrs. Whitmore. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Her face paled. Every eye turned to me, but I didn't blink. I watched the judge lean forward, now engaged, eyes narrowed, hands steepled. The tide had turned. Then my phone buzzed once in my pocket. I checked it under the table. One message from Miles, my private investigator. Airport, Rourke was boarding, flagged at check-in, non-extradition. I stared at it, another buzz. This time from the court prosecutor. She stood. Your Honor, we have just been informed the defendant, Rourke Whitmore, attempted to flee the country this morning. A bench warrant has been issued. The judge didn't speak for a beat. Bailiffs, prepare for arrest protocols. Within minutes, 2 officers whispered into their earpieces and strode out the door. Celeste sat rigid. She didn't move. Not even when they came back in and nodded toward the prosecutor. Her son was in custody, caught trying to escape his own lies. I expected her to scream again. She didn't. She just folded. The proud matriarch, the manipulator, the puppeteer, now a husk of pressed fabric and dead stares. I didn't gloat. I didn't flinch. You both tried to break me, I whispered under my breath. But I'm still here. Later that afternoon, I sat in my car outside the courthouse parking lot, engine off, my hands still on the wheel though I'd been parked for 20 minutes. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt finished. There's a silence after war that nobody talks about, the kind that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like ash settling. I closed my eyes, inhaled. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail. Hi, Maris. It's Felicia from Whitaker Realty. Just wanted to let you know the court's processed the paperwork. The house is yours again. Keys are ready when you are. I stared through the windshield. The world kept moving. Cars honking, birds landing on the sidewalk, normalcy pretending it had always been here. I replayed her last words in my head. Keys are ready when you are. My reflection in the rearview mirror didn't smile. It's not about the house. It's about who I am when I walk into it again. The sky was the color of concrete when I stepped out of the courthouse. Verdict in hand, keys in my purse. Everything was quiet except for the soft hum of traffic and my heartbeat in my throat. I'd won. The judge's voice still echoed in my head. Full restitution granted? It should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like silence. I stared at the papers. My name restored, the assets, the house, even the damn trust fund. All mine again. Still, a strange ache sat in my chest. A grief I couldn't name. Behind me, I heard the courtroom doors swing shut. I didn't turn around. I'd seen enough of that place to last a lifetime. They took Celeste away in cuffs, her eyes darting like a cornered animal. Rourke didn't get the cuffs. He took a plea, probably to save his teeth and what was left of his image. But he still won't see daylight for a long time. I should have smiled. But I didn't. Later, I stood at the front door of my old home. Felicia, the real estate agent, smiled gently as she handed me the keys. It's all yours now. She didn't say anything else, just turned and left. The doorknob was cold in my hand. The house looked untouched, like a frozen diorama of a life I no longer lived. I walked in. The air felt stale, quiet in all the wrong ways. I stepped into the foyer and closed the door behind me. Room by room, I wandered like a stranger. My footsteps echoed off the hardwood. The walls still wore the same paint. The picture frames had been taken down, but their outlines lingered, faint rectangles of a life that never really existed. In the living room, I reached out and touched the mantel. It used to hold family photos. Now, it held dust. I whispered, "This was never home. It was just a stage." Later that week, I pulled out a roller and painted over the dining room wall, the one where Celeste used to brag about Rourke's college scholarships, like she'd written the checks herself. That wall was mine now. It would carry my story this time. In the entryway, I placed a framed photo of me and Lily, taken 2 weeks ago. Just us, laughing over ice cream. That image would greet anyone who entered from now on. Naomi dropped by the next day. She hadn't spoken much during the trial. She didn't need to. "I was wrong," she said quietly, handing me a bottle of wine. "I believed them for too long." I nodded. "You weren't the only one." She paused. "You taught me something. About surviving. About refusing to let people write your ending." We sat on the porch and drank in silence. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like the world was spinning off its axis. It felt still. A week later, I visited my father's grave. I stood there in a long black coat, hair pinned back, the wind tugging at my sleeves. I placed a single white lily against the headstone and whispered, "You were right. Not every invitation is genuine." I turned and looked out over the hill, the city stretching wide below me. My city, my future. Some scars never heal, not fully. Some parts of you stay broken, but you learn to live around them. You learn to rebuild on top of the wreckage, not pretend it never happened. I don't know what comes next, but this time, whatever it is, I'll choose it. Not for survival, for me. I didn't need revenge to move forward. I just needed to remember who I was before they tried to erase me. Looking back, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that survival isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about refusing to let the lies define you. I wasn't born strong. I became strong because they gave me no other choice. Justice doesn't always come wrapped in applause. It often arrives in silence, after you've picked yourself up for the 100th time. To anyone watching this who's ever felt invisible, discarded, or betrayed by the ones who swore they loved you, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You are becoming. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to erase you, your worth, or your truth? What would you have done differently? Or maybe, what did you do that made you proud? If this video moved you or made you think, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't resonate with you, I still want to hear why. Was it the story, the ending? I want this to be a place where real voices are heard. And hey, if you're still here, that means this story meant something. So hit that subscribe button, because there are more truths, more voices, and more fire to come.